What's up, everybody? Another episode of Smoking That Ish here for you. Appreciate you guys tuning in. First, let's get to some shout outs. D Game Podcast Studios, of course, and the D Game Podcast, D Game 6923 on YouTube. You should go check that out. Definitely some interesting stuff over there. Superior Buds in Mitchell. Dakota Natural Growers, dude. I tried the Chimera they got over there. First off, absolutely beautiful on bag appeal. Just gorgeous looking, frosty, so purple it's almost black looking buds. Very, very nice. Sits at 19.99. We're going to call it 20%. Smells earthy and sweet. Incredible trichomes, like I said. Almost looks like it's covered in just the tiniest little dewdrops, but absolutely covered in it. Smoking it, it's smooth as can be. Sweet, chemi, exhale. Definitely a great smoke. Loved it. So good job. Well done, you guys, over there at Dakota Natural Growers. Nicely done. Shout out to Cloud9 and Mitchell, of course, just because always. Awesome. Mitchell Glass now has Easter Yoshis. I don't know if he's going to keep doing it, but he definitely had them around Easter, and I'm sure if you request and offer enough cash, he will do one for you. They're basically just trap Yoshis, but with adorable little bunny ears, you know? Just when you thought they couldn't get any cuter, Mitchell Glass does them even more adorable. All right, getting into it. Back into the history of cannabis, okay? So here we go. We're going to get into the more of the restrictions and I don't know, I suppose the anti-cannabis part of cannabis, you know? All the people who made it to where it is today, you know, to where we have to fight so hard for something that just makes so much sense. So we're going to 1787. You guys ready? You ready? Here we go. 1787. King of Madagascar, King Julian. You guys know him. They made the cartoon about him with the fucking... No. King... I'm not even going to try and... It's spelled, I'm going to spell this for you, and you're going to see why I'm not going to try and pronounce it, because it's not even pronounced like this. It's pronounced in like Arabic or something, and I can't do it. But it's spelled ANDRIANA So we are going to call them King Andriana. King Andriana banned cannabis and its use throughout the Morena Kingdom soon after taking the throne. The king went so far as to implement capital punishment, aka the death penalty, for cannabis use. So for eating it or smoking it, that fool would kill you in Madagascar in 1787. You can't really hate on him though, as much as you want to, because he's a pretty big deal in Morena. King Andriana unified his kingdom, which had been experiencing 77 years of civil war. This not only made him a cultural hero, but has given him an almost mythic status among the Morena people. He ruled for 23 years, dying at the ripe old age of 64 or 65. Not entirely sure, because it was a long time ago. Didn't keep exact records of stuff back then. 1798, Napoleon's troops. Back to this. Napoleon's troops get high on hashish after being introduced to it in Egypt. Let's see. Yeah. After being introduced to it in Egypt, we bounce back and forth. I wanted to make sure I wasn't repeating too much nonsensical stuff from the last time, you know, the same stuff over and over. 1798, Napoleon's troops get high on hashish after being introduced to it in Egypt. With Egypt being an Islamic country, alcohol wasn't available, so the troops resorted to trying hashish, which they developed a taste for. But Napoleon Bonaparte, or as we're going to call him from now on, Napoleon Bonaparte, he's a party of bonas, banned cannabis use amongst his soldiers by 1801. And you know what? In his defense, it's probably not easy to get guys to march themselves sometimes to death across enormous distances and unfriendly terrain to shoot people they've never met for reasons that they will probably never understand. You know, once they've smoked a little bit of that giggly twig, not too easy to force them to do that. I imagine they got a lot of questions like, what the fuck are we doing? And why are we shooting these people? What does any of this even mean, man? I imagine a lot of that would come up, and that probably made it difficult to boss them around. Early 1800s, weed is introduced to Brazil either by the Portuguese colonists or African slaves. The Portuguese most likely were interested in using hemp for cultivation of its fibers, while the African slaves were rocking that Mary Jane for psychoactive purposes, and the owners of those slaves did not like that. They didn't want them being, extra conscious of their life and what's going on. All right. 1830. The Municipal Council of Rio de Janeiro, of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, prohibits bringing the devil's lettuce into the city and prohibits its use by any slave. Of course, do we see a trend here? 1836 to 1840. A very, oh no, we covered this last time. The Hashishin. Very interesting man went on an expedition to North Africa and the Middle East. Jacques Joseph Moreau, a French psychiatrist and the first qualified person to study the effects of cannabis, or any drug for that matter, on the central nervous system. Moreau wanted to understand the relationship between madness and dreams. In 1845, he published the book Du Hashish et des, later translated as Hashish and Mental Illness. He was also a member of the Paris-based Club des Hashishins, Club of the Hashish Eaters. Founded in 1844, the group was dedicated to the exploration of drug-induced experiences, mainly hashish. The group included writers, politicians, psychiatrists, playwrights, and poets. The real cream of the creative crop, you know? Back to regulation and criminalization. The British spread long-standing Gandia, as it was pronounced in India, practices by shipping Indian slaves all over their empire. This led to a ban by the British-owned nation of Mauritius. I'm probably pronouncing that horribly, but that's what it is right now. Mauritius. 1840. Mauritius, a volcanic island nation in the Indian Ocean, made cannabis illegal over concerns of its effects on their Indian slaves. Once again, hard to control people when they're smoking cannabis or doing anything that wakes them up a little bit. 1842, another super cool dude named Brooke O'Shaughnessy brought cannabis back from his trip to Bengal back to Britain, provoking renewed interest in the West. O'Shaughnessy was an Irish, surprise, with O'Shaughnessy, physician famous for his work in pharmacology, chemistry, and telegraphy, or anything to do with the telegraph, as well as the telegraph's use in India. And I know I'm probably putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable when it comes to telegraphy, to whatever. Anyways, 1850s, Swahili traders helped spread cannabis from the east coast to the west coast of Africa. 1870, marijuana use by Indian slaves made illegal in British-owned Singapore Also in 1870, Natal, now part of South Africa, they passed the I don't even want to say it. It's called the Coolie Law. That word is a derogatory term for Indian slaves, but that's the name of the law. It was the C-word law consolidation, which prohibited the smoking, use, or possession, sale, barter, or gifting of that sweet, sweet chiba to any Indian slaves. The British went so far as to try and ban the use of the chronic in India itself in 1838, 1871, and 1877. But every single time they failed. And how did the Indian people make them fail? They simply wouldn't quit using it. There was no violent. I mean, there was probably many violent fights between the British and the Indians, but it seems when it came to cannabis, it was simply everywhere and everyone used it. You couldn't stop it. 1894, the British Indian government completed a very thorough study of reefer in India. The report's findings stated, and I quote, "Viewing the subject generally, it may be added that the moderate use of these drugs is the rule, and that excessive use is comparatively exceptional. The moderate use practically produces no ill effects. In all but the most exceptional cases, the injury from habitual moderate use is not appreciable. The excessive use may certainly be accepted as very injurious, though it must be admitted that in many excessive consumers, the injury is not clearly marked. The injury done by the excessive use is, however, confined almost exclusively to the consumer himself. The effect on society is rarely appreciable. It has been the most striking feature of this inquiry to find how little the effects of hemp drugs have obtruded themselves on observation." Report of the Indian Hemp Drugs Commission. Obtruded, by the way, just means become noticeable and in an unwelcome or intrusive way. Knowing this, knowing that marijuana is basically, and hashish, all of it, is basically harmless, the British would still go on to criminalize cannabis everywhere they colonized, mostly out of fear of slave revolts or uprisings. Because, once again, hard to control people who are high. So, on to 1879. Egypt bans the importation of kif, as it was called in that region. 1890, Morocco strictly regulates cultivation and trade, while Greece just flat out bans hashish entirely. No interest there. 1900s, you see sweeping restrictions throughout the globe. Of course, here they come. All the sweet, sweet restrictions on it. 1906, the District of Columbia, future Washington, D.C., places the first restrictions on the sale of pot. 1913, British-owned Jamaica. Bet you didn't know this, but Jamaica outlaws marijuana with, ironically, the ganja law. The law placed ganja on the same list as opium. So now we're starting to see we're starting to see where they put marijuana and other dangerous drugs in the same category. This is where this starts. It was more countries than the British, but the British really backed the hell out of it. In the 1920s, the same bullshit law passes in South Africa, the UK, and New Zealand. Yeah, not a good thing. 1923, Canada, without any reports of use in their country, mind you, criminalizes that wacky tobacco in the Opium and Narcotic Drug Act. So marijuana is not, it's not opium, not an opiate, and it is not a narcotic. So, kind of stupid. I don't know. I don't know what you think, but Canada jumping on a idiotic bandwagon just to please their their British buddies. Way to go, Canada. 1935, anti-cannabis propaganda. This is a piece of actual anti, and I don't know if I did this last episode, but it deserves to be repeated. Anti-cannabis propaganda states, a piece of paper handed out to people and passed, and states, beware, young and old people in all walks of life. This, and then has a picture of marijuana, may be handed to you by the friendly stranger. It contains the killer drug marijuana. Dun, dun, dun. A powerful narcotic. No. In which lurks murder. Negative. Insanity. Incorrect. And death. Wrong. Warning. Dope peddlers are shrewd. They may put some of this in the, and then a picture of a teapot. So they may slip it into your tea, people. Careful. The druggies are coming for you. And, and it shows a picture of something you can't even see anymore. Or in the tobacco cigarette. Careful who you're bumming cigarettes off of, America. And this was produced by the Interstate Narcotic Association of Chicago, Illinois. Probably should have focused on, stopping people from killing each other in Chicago a long time ago. Because I heard you guys are doing a great job on that right now. Anyways, 1937, the United States passes the Marijuana Tax Act. Ding. The Marijuana Tax Act. The aim of this Marijuana Tax Act, very blatantly, was to reduce the hemp industry through excessive taxation. And, this is still debated. It's still debated on what the point of this law was, whether it was anti-hemp or not, and it was extremely anti-hemp. Like I said, the main aim of this act, as far as I can tell, was to reduce the hemp industry through excessive taxation. The whole reason we fought the British and started America, to fight taxation without representation, but whatever. Whatever. By 1937, we're past all that, dude. Now our government's making the money off the taxes. So now it's cool. Okay. Tax the hell out of people for whatever reason you want. Now it's okay. The law was mainly backed by a group of just absolute winners. The people that you would probably be like supporting, to just down to earth good dudes. The law was backed by Andrew William Mellon, a second generation banker and buddy of Herbert Hoover. William Randolph Hearst, owner of the largest newspaper chain and media company at the time, Hearst Communications. And this guy was a real gem. A real rascal of a guy, a rapscallion. He was given his first newspaper company by his senator father. So, living off of daddy from the start, Hearst helped push crime, corruption, sex, exaggeration of things to, sell papers. He started that. Was also so awesome, this guy. Was also a big supporter of the Nazi Party. Going so far as to allow them to publish articles in his papers. So, super cool, number one guy. Just the best. And once again, just so you don't forget that name, that was William Randolph Hearst Sr., by the way. Good dude. Good dude. I'm sure his family owns a lot of stuff still. And the last backer of this crazy act was the DuPont family. You know, paint people. And I don't know if you know this about the DuPont family, but they've poisoned more Americans than practically anybody else through their improper handling and disposal of chemicals. And they're still doing it. So, way to go, DuPont. Awesome. That's who fought to make marijuana illegal. And, yeah, what a bunch of dirtbags. It was basically backed by the worst people you can imagine were backing it. So, no good there. No good stuff. And honestly, I was going to get into some of this stuff in the next episode, but I think I'm just going to go for it right now, dude. Yeah, definitely going to go for it right now. During World War II, hemp production would ramp back up, of course, to support the war effort, but it never picked back up commercially due to the original ban. People had simply just gone in different directions by then. Nobody waited out for hemp or anything. They got what they wanted and they crushed the hemp industry right there. And you know, if we follow patterns, hemp and cannabis was made illegal almost everywhere in order to control slaves, in order to control, the general population of slave indentured servants, as the British like to put it. Yeah, so I don't know. Does that mean we're slaves here? Sometimes it kind of feels like it. We pay insane fucking taxes. I mean, the whole Tea Party, Boston Tea Party was throwing over I think a 2% tax increase on tea. And we now pay at least 30% in taxes, if not closer to 50. I mean, because you're taxed on your check. You know, when you make your money, you're taxed when you go to the store. When you buy something, you're taxed. And then on your taxes, you're taxed again. So triple tax, and everybody's still cool with it. You know, at least we got iPads and phones and shit. Moving on to liberalizing and legalizing. In 1972, the Dutch government divided drugs into more and less dangerous categories. And of course, cannabis ended up on the lesser category side. Accordingly, possession of 30 grams or less was made a misdemeanor. And they've had cannabis available for recreational use in coffee shops since 1976. And coffee shops are basically just places where you can go and order some bud off the menu, sit and smoke at your leisure, you know? And those have been around in the Dutch area since 1976. Cannabis products are only sold openly in certain coffee shops, so be careful which ones you go to, and possession of up to 5 grams for personal use is decriminalized completely. So don't worry about taking your leftovers home with you, I guess, if you're in Amsterdam. Other types of sales and the transportation of it is not permitted. Although the general approach towards cannabis in that area has been lenient way before decriminalization. Cannabis began to attract new interest as a medicine in the 70s and 80s, particularly due to its effective use for cancer and AIDS patients who reported relief from the effects of chemotherapy and wasting syndrome. In 1996, California, way to go, Cali, became the first U.S. state to legalize medical cannabis in defiance of federal law. So, suck it, feds. In 2001, Canada redeemed itself by becoming the first country to adopt a system of regulating medical cannabis. So, way to go, Canada. Redeemed yourself. Proud of you. 2001, Portugal decriminalized all drugs. So, let's go party in Portugal, people. Maintaining the prohibition on production and sale, but changing personal possession and use from a criminal offense to an administrative one. So there's that. And then subsequently, a number of European and Latin American countries decriminalized cannabis. Belgium in 2003, Chile in 2005, Brazil 2006, Czech Republic 2010, Uruguay signed legislation to legalize recreational cannabis use when the hell was that? In December of 2013. So way to go, President Jose Mujica or Mujica? I don't know. I can't do Spanish names apparently either. So in 2014, Uruguay legalized growing up to 6 plants at home, as well as the formation of growing clubs, state-controlled marijuana dispensaries. Canada, after electing Justin Trudeau in 2015 and forming a liberal, quote-unquote, liberal government, in 2017, the House of Commons passed a bill to legalize cannabis on the 17th of October in 2018. So cannabis legal in Canada. I mean, it's Canada, cannabis. Why wouldn't it be? Some U.S. states have legalized marijuana, but that's only gone so far. We really need it to go on a federal level. And, you know, Biden promised federal legalization, and he got shut down almost immediately by the DEA, who, it turns out, the DEA controls whether a drug is listed as illegal or not and how illegal that drug is. And the DEA is not going to give up their moneymaker, dude. They're not going to give up their cash crop. So federal legalization isn't going to be done until we overthrow or disband the DEA, which we don't really fucking need in the first place. If drugs were all made legal, they'd all be regulated by the government, and we wouldn't have to worry about this fentanyl bullshit or any of the other stuff going on. And it wouldn't cause an epidemic of drug use, because there's one going on right now with everything illegal. If people were actually more educated and knew more about what was going on, they probably wouldn't do it in the first place. But whatever. What do I know? I'm just some stupid pothead. Cannabis is the world's most widely produced, trafficked, and consumed drug in the world as of 2010, thanks to a World Drug Report by the United Nations, identifying that between 128 million and 238 million users, there were 128 million to 238 million that we know of users by 2015. The World Health Organization undertook its first scientific evidence-based assessment of cannabis in between 2018 and 2019, recommending the removal of cannabis and cannabis resin from Schedule 4 of the Single Convention. United Nations Commission voted in December 2020 to approve the change in treaty scheduling. But that doesn't mean shit to the DEA in the United States. Still super illegal. We've got endless amounts of evidence proving that cannabis is far less dangerous than things like alcohol. but nobody wants to hear it, man. So there you have it. There it is. Finito Kaputski, the history of cannabis. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to try and avoid, multiple part episodes after this. I don't think people really enjoy the multiple parts, or a lot of you just got busy. I don't know. But thank you for supporting the show. And remember, if anything I said here offends you or upsets you or violates your personal boundaries and makes you feel like you got to call out and be heard and tell your truth, remember, you can't be mad at me for what I said when I was smoking that ish. So be nice to people and be nice to yourselves, all right? All right? We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And gals. And theys, thems. And everyone else. Appreciate you. Dogs, cats, birds. Scruffy. Comes go boy. All right. Later, guys.